Great, okay, well I'm going to read another couple of stories from my short story collection, The Short, the Long and the Tall. I'd like to thank everybody again for managing to be here tonight. For those who are just arrived, my name's Andrew McIntyre. This is my collection, The Short, the Long and the Tall, about 34 stories in it, published towards the end of last year. And I'll start with one tonight that I'll need to explain a little bit about the context. In the late 80s, I went to Algeria just for some adventure, and found myself living on the street with another lad my age who was an Arab, and we made a living selling clothes in the various markets. And at the time I thought, you know, wow, I'm lucky to be alive. He looked after me, made sure I didn't get my throat cut, and started jotting it down. And this piece is from a much longer work in progress about that time. So I'll now read Under New Management. Mohammed slept in the dim light of the carriage, his head slumped sideways, broken nose bent double, sunken cheeks so deep his face seemed to be carved from wood. Stained black from tobacco, his lower lip jutted out, creating the aura of a hungry animal. His hair tightly curled, short, greasy. I finished the remains of the cigarette, grinding the paper into the wooden slats. The landscape flickered verdant, countryside gradually surrendering to squat, dusty, one-road towns, children waving and yelling, running alongside the carriages. Eventually, the adobe suburbs of Algiers. The train halted in a siding below a rusting iron bridge. Mohammed rubbed his eyes. Searching for a cigarette, he coughed and spat through the vent. We waited for a goods train to start across the vast distance to the desert settlements, Laghuat, Gardiner, Wargala, Timimoun, the wagons clanging by for several minutes. Far away, echoing music over the buildings, Algiers, gleaming white, shadows still long, the breeze of the sea fresh and clean. We jumped from the train into the church cool of the red brick station. Mohammed stripped off his denim jacket and several layers of shirts by a tap, proceeding to swill water over himself. "Ah, that is good," he mumbled. He patted himself with newspaper, grinning, his stomach corrugated with strength. He stuck a cigarette in his mouth as he dried, puffing merrily. "Hey, André, your turn." I splashed water across my face. I retrieved my luggage from the locker and we lurched into the sunlight. Against the blue of the sky, gulls soared on the thermals above the azure bay, sparkling in the morning sun, tiny lapping waves twinkling in the light. Cars pushed slowly through the crowd, billowing exhaust. The muezzins called for prayers, drifting on the breeze. Allahu Akbar! Muhammad Rasul! La Illahu Akbar! Sending shivers down my spine. Mohammed stopped to listen. "Beautiful," I said. He nodded. "The muezzin? Yes, it makes me strong to hear." "Where?" He motioned. "The great mosque near Bab el-Oued. Allahu Akbar. Allons-y. Nous allons chercher l'hôtel. The hotel is in Bab el-Oued. We leave the luggage, then we go into the city. We have to sell today." We wandered by the station precinct, past the railway junction and the docks, the brown army barracks, up the hill along the boulevard by the port. From the centre, we reached Bab el-Oued, walking through cobbled streets that narrowed as we neared the Kasbah. Mohammed stalked ahead. We were sweating heavily. He turned to me, pointing. "Viens, I show you something." A vast 19th century red-brown cathedral built near the great mosque so that the bells might drown the muezzin, the stained glass intact, the walls pock-marked with bullet holes from the war, the damage like acne. We entered through the west door. A familiar, musty hint of incense, the sounds of a surprisingly large congregation. Midday Mass was about to commence. Seeking the altar, the hanging body of Christ, I rested with my bag as my eyes grew accustomed to the gloom. Through the cloisters, the organ loft, the choir stands, the old sacred regions in the ghostly half-light. Bands of women bustle, jostling noisily through stores, selling men's underwear, men's suits, magazines, newspapers, pans, brushes, iron goods for the kitchen, women's apparel, The sound of registers and loudspeakers announcing bargains echoing through the nave. The altar, a restaurant where families were gorging on chicken and chips. Above them, an advertisement claiming the best lamb in Algiers. Slightly nauseated, I found myself at